Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. So today I thought we would paint with ink because we haven't done that for a little bit. But before we get started, I just want to check my volume is up. And that looks good. All right, and I'm going to be using a stamp set. So I love this bouquet with the roses called Layers of Beauty, and this one also comes with coordinating dies. And if you were here last week, you saw me paint this with watercolors, and it was very popular. People really liked it. And so I thought what I would do is something similar, this time using inks. So these are the water-based inks that are used to refresh the stamp pads. Come in a little bottle like this. They're very inexpensive. I've got my water painter brushes. I'm just going to grab the middle one to start with. I might need the little one. And I've got a couple of pieces of the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stamp my image twice. And the reason I'm going to be doing it twice is because I want to show you how you can take a flat image and turn it into a 3D paper crafted project, if you follow along. So I'm just going to go ahead and give that a stamp. Now I'm using a very pale ink. This is a yellow ink, and give that a good press. And I hope you can, I think you can see that pretty well. So there it is. When you're using a great big stamp like this, it helps to hold the ink pad upside down and bring it to the stamp. It's a little easier to work with. Okay, so let's see. Let's get this over here. All right, we're all set to go. So I'm just going to put these things aside for the minute. And I'm checking to see if you all can see and hear me, and so far so good. And I see Kelly. Good morning, Kelly. Nice to see you. I hope you're having a nice day. All right, so this is going to go pretty quickly. I'm not going to do a very detailed watercolor or ink painting. I'm just going to do as much as I can to get started, and then we're going to jump ahead and I'm going to show you what you can do with your picture once it's done. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit. I want you to be able to see this better. That looks pretty good. So I'm and I'm using the inks exactly as I would the watercolor. Excuse me. So I'm just using very little pigment. In fact, there's probably enough ink on here from the stamp that all I have to do is, sorry, I'm losing my voice. Okay, it must be coffee time. Hang on. Cheers, everybody. Coffee break. Okay, let's see if that helps. That's good. So I'm just melting the ink from the lines, basically, that's already on there. And as you can see, there's plenty. And I'm also going into the leaves, because when you think about green, you remember that green is a mixture of yellow and blue. So I can just get those started with a light wash of yellow. And I'm leaving much of the paper white for my highlights. So just a very quick first wash, getting all these places. There's nothing to it. And if you're interested, if you like the idea of painting with inks, and if you love watercolor, and if it's something that you've always told yourself that, oh, I could never do that, I can help you. And I'd love for you to join us in our next class on beginning watercolor. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go to my website at dandelioncottagedesign.com and sign up for notes. And there's going to be a special announcement in the next issue of Notes, and we will be working with this set, and you will have your choice of working with either watercolor or ink. So whichever you feel more comfortable with is fine. So now I'm just adding a little bit of blue. I'm going to get that into my leaves, just like so. And here we go. And I do have a container of water off to the side here that I'm using to swish my brush in. I'm not using the water in the handle of the water painter. If you notice, there's a reservoir of water here, which is great when you don't happen to have a container of water handy. For instance, if you're painting out of doors or on a trip, that sort of thing. But when you're in the studio and you're set up and you have your palette and a place for your water containers, it's a lot easier to just swish the brush in the water container, because that way you can control the amount of water a little bit better. Alright, so there are my leaves started, and you can see this is still a very pale wash of color. I'm just going to add a little bit. I'm just going to put some of this blue. Actually, I think I'll start with pink. Let's begin with the pink. My forget-me-nots are blooming. I should have brought some in because they are so darn pretty. And the tiny little buds start out as pink, and then as the flowers open, they turn blue, and they're just so pretty. Right now there are clouds of blue forget-me-nots in the garden, and it always makes me happy because it reminds me of a friend of mine who gave them to me, and she has long passed, but when I see the forget-me-nots, I think of her, and that makes me happy. All right. I'm just putting a couple of touches of blue on these daisy-like flowers. To get those started. Alright, I'm going to go back into my leaves and add a little more value. One of the things that we talk quite a lot about in watercolor class is value. And value is just how dark a color is. And that becomes very important when you are trying to depict light and shade on the objects that you're painting. So you want to pay attention to that. So you see the ink is wonderful. With a little bit of practice, you can learn how to use that just as you would watercolor. And of course, all the same artistic concepts apply. Remember, you paint what you know, not what you see. So if you're somebody who has been in some art classes before, I think you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot that goes on before you even touch brush to paper. So you want to make sure you have a good understanding of what it is that you're hoping to accomplish with your painting. And then it's just a load of fun to have a wonderful session painting. There's Ginger. Good morning, Ginger. Good to see you. How are you today? I did get your email, Ginger, so thank you very much for that. I was not doing my email this weekend because I had our 10th girls' night out with friends, and it was so much fun. And I get together with a group of ladies, and we do this usually once a year or so, but we've been a little bit held up with the pandemic and things like that, and so this was our first chance to get together. We had beautiful weather. We were able to sit out on the deck by the pond and enjoy each other's company, and it was so good to be back with friends again. It had been too long, and I enjoyed myself so much. And I even got to share some card making with them the next morning. We had a little coffee and a card, which was a lot of fun. And so that's all good. Alright, so this is beginning to develop. And I want to get back to my rose now. And I'm going to add a little bit of, tiny bit of red to my yellow. So I get a beautiful peachy tone, because you know I love those peachy toned roses. So let's just get this started. pretty soon I will have roses here to paint from the garden. I was noticing all the buds on the stalks where the leaves are starting to emerge, both on the roses and on the grapevines. I've got to get out there and do a little pruning. I'm a little behind on my pruning and they need attention. But it seems like the warmer days now have really kicked everything into high gear, which means that I've got to get I've got to get out there and get busy too. I've done a little. How many of you have access to some fresh flowers that you can work from? If you do, there's no better practice than to work from live specimens, and even if you're able to get a bouquet from the supermarket, that would be awesome. And do some quick little studies like I'm doing here today. Maybe you have a sketchbook that you can keep them all in and see how you progress, because if you do it long enough you will see progress. Okay, so you know, it's just like going, I tell my watercolor students, it's just like going to the gym. You get yourself there, get your membership, you learn how to begin, and then the rest of it is up to you and just really putting the time in. And if you do that consistently, you will see consistent progress. So that's the secret. If there's a secret, it's the discipline of doing. Okay, just like with your musical scales, anything really that's worthwhile. It takes time, and you have to be patient with yourself, and you'll get there, and you'll be so happy that you took the time to do it, because it's such a great way to spend time. And especially if you're like me and you love flowers, to take the time to do the careful observation is such a great pleasure. All right, well, that's looking pretty good now. I want to get back to some of the details in those little blue flowers. I think what I'll do is, I missed a leaf here. Let's get this. There we go, that's a little better. You see, it doesn't take much, just a couple of minutes. You can do this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the other one fast as I can, and then I'm going to show you how you can use them to make a 3D decoration for your card front, or maybe a box, or maybe just as a something to put on the table, sort of a home decor, whatever you like. Okay, and finally the last thing I want to do is just take some of my rose mixture and just add some quick accents here and there. Okay, and I'm going to say that's good to go. And let's start on the second one. And this one's not going to be quite as detailed. And there's Emma. Hey, hi Emma. I've got all my friends from California with me today. That's fun. Good to see you all. Now, this one, I'm going to begin this in the same similar way as I did the other. But I'm not going to be using all of the area on here. I'm just going to be using the flowers and maybe a couple of the leaves. And I'm just putting a plain wash. Again, this is mostly the color from the ink. And I'm going to grab some of these leaves. I think that should do it with the leaves, and I just want to add a little bit of blue. And again, I'm going back into my yellow with a little bit of the red. Kind of pull that around. So I think you can see that these flowers are painted a little bit looser. Okay, I'm just looking to get some color on there. And that'll do it. All right, so I'm going to zoom you out a little bit so you can see better what I'm doing. Oops, that's the wrong way. There we go. Get the ink off the table. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut these out with my cut and emboss machine. And in this stamp set, we have a beautiful big framelit. And actually, I forgot about this die. Let me do something. I want to show you something else really fast. This will just take a minute. Oops. Pick that up. I have some extra space over here that I can use, and just grabbing my inks again. If I just take a splash of ink, okay, so there's some green. Just taking my yellow and my blue and just kind of randomly mixing them together. Okay, that looks pretty good. So there's my splotch of green. Because this is pretty wet, I'm going to go ahead and turn my heat tool on. And this is going to be a little bit noisy, so I'm going to begin by muting you, so just stay tuned. All right, I'm back. Now that may be a little bit damp yet, but it's dry enough. Hey, Debbie from Canada. Hi, Debbie, welcome. I'm a big fan of the parks in Canada. I have spent a lot of time in Eastern Canada. Of course, it's been a while, but I do love camping there because the parks in Canada are so beautiful. And so I've been to the Laurentians and Gaspé Peninsula and Nova Scotia. I've been to Cape Breton and Shetty Camp and all different places, and I just love it. Some of my best camping memories. All right, so there is my image, and I'm standing up now to get my head right over the top because I can't see it very well from sitting. So I hope that's pretty good. And if it's not great, you'll be able to do better at home because you'll be able to see a little better than I can right here. I'm just going to roll that through. Debbie says, yes, we have some beautiful places. Absolutely exquisite. Debbie, what part of Canada are you from? All right, now I'm going to go ahead and go back this way. Get that lined up. It's looking pretty good. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm just trying to get it close to the edges. I am going to go ahead and ink the edges, so if there's any white showing, I'll be able to take care of that in just a second. Okay, now with this area here, I'm going to take this cute little leaf die, which I think is so pretty. And I'm going to pass that through a couple of times. I'm going to move that over so I can get a couple of different ones. And this is so pretty. You get those little extras out. So there, that's how that looks, and I just love that die. And I'll do that 2 more times, I think. Could probably, if I was really careful, I might be able to get 4 of them out of my splotch here, but we only need a couple. Got some static electricity sticking things together here. Now I'm looking for my piercing tool. Let me just pop these out. I love this tool. This is a older piercing tool from Stampin' Up. It's retired now, but it's probably the one tool aside from my bone folder that I reach for most often. Snips, bone folder, and piercing tool. Okay, let's get this out of our way. Today's session is really going to be a combination of watercolor technique and a little bit of paper crafting. So let's take a look at what we've got so far. I'm going to zoom. I know we're zoomed out. I'll zoom you in just a moment so you can see better. Popping out those little pieces. I think this is, I love these little leaf dies that have this extra little cutout in them. They're so pretty. All right, let's get rid of this. All right, so we've got our painted piece, and then we've got our semi-painted piece. And I want to grab my sponges. Let's find a green one. There's a green one. And let's see, do I have a yellow one? Maybe? It's sort of yellow. It doesn't have to be exact. Oh wait, that's much closer. All right, so we've got a green and a yellow. And I'm going to go back, get my yellow ink and my green ink. Let me see, do I have what color is this? Granny apple green, that'll work. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, we're mixing our own colors, so just think about this in terms of yellow, red, and blue, and you'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and, if I can pick this up, the Fluid 100 watercolor paper is a little bit thicker than some of the other cardstocks and papers that we use. And so what I like to do, well, to be honest, I like to do it on all the papers, but especially here, if I'm working with something that you might catch the edge, is to just go ahead and get a little bit of color on there. because it just helps the piece to look so much more finished. Now I'm doing the same thing here. So you can see where I've got some white around the edges of the die cut. By coming in with a little bit of sponging here and there, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but just a little bit here and there, it just helps to give it a much more finished and more professional look to your project. You know, all the little details that you take really pay off in the end, I think. All right, so there we go with that. And then I'm going to go in with my green. And this time, I'm just going to go on some of the leaves. You see, so now there's no more of that white edge showing, and it just looks like a beautiful, carefully cut image. I'll leave some of them yellow. Just a little bit here and there. And the same on here. Sandra's here. She says, what would we do without our die cutting machine? That's kind of hilarious that you say that, Sandra, because to be honest, when I first joined Stampin' Up, it was about 7 years ago and a bit. And I found Stampin' Up because I was searching for good paper. I was trying to make some presentation boxes for some ornaments that I had made, and I was making my own boxes, which I love to do. And the papers I was getting at the local craft stores was junk. It was popping, it had a white core, it was not doing what I wanted it to do. When I folded it, it cracked, it tore, it was just really bad. And so I was trying to find other paper sources, and I went online and I found this company, Stampin' Up. I had never heard of them before, and I thought, okay, last ditch effort. I'm going to try their paper and see if it works. And it did. And I absolutely loved the quality. And you know, I got a catalog, and I saw the other things, and one thing led to another. But after I had gotten all the things I thought I needed, I had seen the dies in the die cutting machine. I thought, oh well, that's not for me. I don't need a die cutting machine. I don't need any dies because I'm just interested in these papers. Well, at that time they came out with a bundle, and I can't remember the name. I think it was Eastern Medallion. Does that ring a bell with anybody? And it was this beautiful kind of a Persian star design, which I love because I love all things decorative, right? And it was a beautiful geometric set, and I fell in love with it. And then I noticed the dies that came with it that cut out all these amazing shapes, and I went in hook, line, and sinker. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I wasn't going to do it, but I have to do it because these things are just so beautiful. And I still have that set. One of these days I'm going to dig it out, and we'll have a session using that set. We'll do that. We can do that in something old, something new. So for those of you who don't know, I have a private Facebook group. It's called Something Old, Something New. And it's where we share our projects using retired Stampin' Up products as well as current Stampin' Up! Products. So if you're like me and you have your favorite things that you will never get rid of, then that is the place to share them with the others, because many of us have a bunch of those products and we still love to use them. Something old, something new. So the way you get into the group is very simple. You just put a comment here and I will see your name. So just, you know, tell me where you're from. And then all you need to do is do a Facebook search for something old, something new. The group should pop up and ask to be invited in. And when I see your name that I'll recognize from the comments, I'll be happy to let you in. It's that easy. And of course, the other thing I want you to be aware of is that I have my classes that I let you know about in notes from Dandelion Cottage. And the way you find out about all the classes and the different events I have coming up is to subscribe to notes from Dandelion Cottage, and you will learn how you can get free classes, all the different things I have to offer, and a bunch of stuff I have coming right up. And I think I told you a little bit last time, but I've got a whole bunch of live classes. So if you're in the area, I have a summer's worth of activities coming up, and I'd love to have you join us. So if you want to learn more about those, get on the mailing list. And in notes, I'll also have pictures of all the flowers that are currently blooming here at Dandelion Cottage, and the chickens and all the other goings on. It's just beautiful this time of year. All right, so as you can see, I did a little bit of fussy cutting out of my big die cut. So now I have these pieces of these larger roses. I also have a little bit of greenery there. I'm going to go ahead, grab my yellow, go around the edges of my roses. You know, there's a certain degree of moisture in the ink, and that helps to moisten the paper a little bit when you do this. And when the paper is moist, you're able to bend it a little bit easier. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab my stamp case so I can see the lines a little better here. So I'm going to take this big rose and I'm just going to snip some of these petals out so that they're free. All right, and I'll show you that in just a second. You see, so I'm just cutting in between the petal a little bit, just a little here and there. This is not, so if I take a little V-shaped wedge and then go a little closer to the flower center, you see it gives me a little more movement of the actual petal. I'm not doing this on every single one. I'm just doing it on the outer petals. I'm going to work my way around. Take off any pointy corners. All right, so it's just a little bit of a release there, and also on these others. And I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to remove a couple of petals completely. finally this one, take that off. Oops. Okay. Go back around those fresh cuts. Okay, I think we're ready to assemble. Let's put this back in the case so we don't lose the little die. I'm always afraid of losing a die, so I'm very careful, or I try to be very careful about putting things back. And when I make these labels for the magnetic sheets, I always add the number of dies that are supposed to be there so I can count them before I put them back on the shelf and know that everything's in there. Sandra says, I wish I lived closer. Well, listen, you know what, Sandra? I've got a lot of friends in California that love to tune in. You and Ginger and some others. Oh, and she remembers the medallion. So cool. Debbie remembers it too. I think I should schedule a trip to California, and someplace that's kind of centrally located where we could all meet up. Maybe you've got an art center, or some kind of a place where we could actually have a class. Wouldn't that be fun? And guess what? I've never been to California. My brother used to live in California, and we always used to talk about how we were going to get together, and it just never happened. So I would love to come. All right, I'm going to grab, let's see, I need a piece of cardstock here. Hang on a minute. I don't have one handy. It looks like I've used up all my scrap pieces, so let me go ahead and cut a piece. What's this? What color do we have here? Well, this is Granny Apple Green. That's a little too bright, but let me get a piece of let's do Old Olive, since that's just what I have handy. I'm just going to put this down so you can see what I'm doing. I'm not necessarily going to be using it as a background. But, okay, so here is our image, like so. And now what I want to do is take my bone folder, and I'm just going to start to give these little cutouts a little more dimension. Okay, and I want some of them sort of curling up, some of them curling down. If you have a paper sculpting kit with the ball burnishers, the great big ones, to help you add dimension to your flowers, those are awesome. Just kind of scrunching them up a little bit. And I'll show you what this looks like in just a second. Okay, so you see it's just, can you see how the pieces are just getting a little bit of extra dimension to them? Okay, and then I'm going to use my dimensionals for this. I'm going to match those up to the flower. I think this one could take two. I'm a little sticky here. There we go. All right, and then for my leaves, glue. I packed all my glue up when we went to the girls' night out, so let me just grab one of these. And I'm just putting the glue in the places where there's a little more paper. Pop that on there, if I can get it in. Oops. There we go. So pretty. And put some on the top here. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush out again, and I'm just going to touch up a couple of little areas. Get that under. I can sneak that in there. There we go. And don't worry that the leaves don't line up with the leaves underneath there. That's okay. It's just going to help to add a little depth. That's what we're looking for. It's a little bit of depth here. Okay. And you can use this one too. So again, the same thing with the leaves, just giving them a little bit of a curl. And you can bend it a little bit, make that come up. Let's see, one more. Let's release this leaf a little better, so it has a little more movement. Okay, so I've got something that looks like that. And I'm going to pop that right on top of this other leaf, like so. All right, so then the last thing I want to do is just to add a couple of little details here and there. This is extra, extra, extra. So I'm taking a drop of my red, mixing it with my yellow to give me a nice, rich yellow tone. And I'm just going to put a few little lines here and there to indicate the petals on the roses, because you remember this rose was the one that did not have a lot of detail on it. So now I can go back in and with just a couple of strokes get that looking a little more dimensional. And I'm going to add a little shadow down in here because that rose is behind the big rose above it. So it would be getting a little cast shadow on there. Same here where the leaf is. So see, just the final touches, just a little bit here and there. Now, if you want to take it a step further, you could add some a little sparkle, or you could do heat embossing before you painted your roses if you were looking for something even more sparkly. Get the hot gold on there, but that's entirely up to you. I just want to give you the beginning of an idea, hopefully a little bit of inspiration. And don't worry, I'm going to give you a close-up in just a second. Hang on, hang on. Here we go. All right, you can see a little bit better now. So I'm just touching up. Oops, that guy's a little loose. Let's press that down better. Okay, there we go. Make sure these are stuck down. And these little touches just help to enhance the effect of the 3D. Just a little bit here and there. And then finally your darkest dark in the shadow areas. And there you go. All right, so I'm going to leave that here for the minute. And but I just wanted to show you how you could make a really sweet floral 3D decoration. And now this, of course, could be used on a card front. Let me get my poker so I can pick it up. You can use this on a card front. All right, it's not too thick for that. But I think what I would like to do is to use it on the lid of a box, and I could add even some other embellishment, maybe from some other stamp sets. You know, some of the different shaped leaves and that sort of thing, and just further embellishment. So, oh, and Cheryl, good morning, Cheryl. Oh, we've got a lot of people here today from across the country. It's so good to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with Paper Crafting Thursday at 12 noon. So please come back. I'm not sure what I have lined up for tomorrow, but I might actually end up using this. Or if I don't use this in tomorrow's project, I will show you what I do with it. Okay, so you can see the finished version. But for now, there it is. Okay, so let's get that on the screen. There we go. Thank you very much. Stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.